Welcome to our first bonus episode. In this one, we'll introduce the conversation guide for our target topic in 2025, the crisis of affordability. If this is a topic your group wants to explore with voters, this episode should help you get ready. We know that the cost of living is a major concern for our neighbors. We've chosen affordability because it's a broad category, an umbrella term that includes so many of the challenges facing ordinary people. This topic is also a portal. It can open the door to discussing the larger systems that harm ordinary people. Our goals with this conversation are first, to listen. Help people feel heard on an individual level and respected for their opinions. We also want to gather data we can convey to candidates. We want to find points of commonality and alliance, building trust in us and the possibility of a continued relationship with voters. And we want to leave the voter with increased awareness and insight into the problems, as well as potential solutions that promote hope. Your group may decide that increased voter awareness is a sufficient outcome for now. Remember that our strategy is to reach for the humanity in others and make connections on that common ground. We'll need to organize beyond that, but it's the right place to start. Your group may also choose to extend the goal of the conversation to an action. This will usually involve offering information, a handout or card. Would you like to come to the listening session our representatives are hosting on public education? Here's some information about that. Would you call our senators and ask them to support this bill? Here's how to do that. Would you be interested in getting our newsletter or coming to our meetings to help plan? I can make sure you're on the list if you can give me your email address. All right, we're just about ready to go to our doors with those goals in view. But first, I'm going to share a statement from a friend of deep canvassing in Barnstead, New Hampshire. We were debating how assertive a canvasser should be when the door opens. And my friend said to me, it's not a matter of assertiveness, but a matter of someone's remarkable, memorable, human presence and purpose for being there, that evokes respect, that motivates and smooths frank conversation, and that leads to relevant and productive action. I love that. So, let's gather our courage, curiosity, and compassion and go to doors. When the door opens, you'll introduce yourself, emphasizing your identity as a neighbor. Hi, my name is Martha. I live here in town. You'll indicate your affiliation. I'm with a group of volunteers in Mascoma Forward. That's the Regional Democrats. And you'll ask to speak with the voter on your list. I'm hoping to speak with John Smith. Remember that if you're using the Minivan app, this text will be available on your screen to check before you go to the door. Next, you state your purpose. We're out surveying our neighbors on what would make their lives more affordable. This is what some people call the kitchen table issues, cost of living things, changes we could make here in New Hampshire to make your life better. And next, you ask your question. Is there something that could change to make your life more affordable? Here, the person is likely to pause and think. A follow-up prompt can help them focus. What would you say is your top concern? You may find that more questions will be necessary or helpful. Someone might even say, what do you mean by affordable? So you might ask, how's the cost of living changed for you? Or What pressures do you face in this economy? Is your life more or less affordable now than it was before? And then you'll come back to a version of the focus question. What's your top concern? Or what's your biggest worry right now? Or what's your toughest struggle? Minivan will have a list of likely topics. That last one, food assistance programs, includes things like Meals on Wheels, school lunch, SNAP benefits. After your conversation, you'll record one of these topics as something the voter named as important. Usually, a list like this on Minivan only allows one answer. But for this canvas, you get another screen with the same list, and you can choose a second topic. If the voter mentions a third thing, you can record that on the next screen. You can also prompt additions. Are there other things you think should change? The crisis of rising costs affects so many aspects of daily life that you may well hear about more than one. Of course, the voter may mention something that's not on the list. For instance, John Smith tells you he likes to do home building projects and how hard it is now to get affordable materials. If so, remember that you can always use the notes function in Minivan to type in more. In any case, when the voter names any topic, you're ready for your second step, where you're listening empathetically, asking open-ended questions. You're looking for some common ground in the other person's story. Maybe they say, my life would be a whole lot easier if my property taxes weren't so high. Property taxes, right. How have they changed for you? Well, they just keep going up and up. I don't know how I'm going to hang on to my house. Where am I going to go? You can judge when it's time to share your own story, seeking to make a connection. You can affirm the feeling you're hearing, and you can tell them something that matters to you. That sounds pretty scary, and you seem angry too. I was feeling that way when I got my tax bill. I'm going to have to wait on repairing my roof this year. I just won't have the money. I mean, I know my local taxes go for good things like roads and schools, but it seems like a lot of us won't be able to stay in this town if this keeps up. Now the person you're talking with says something challenging. You're going to empathize, confirm that you've heard the feeling. You may want to provide some factual information, but you won't get drawn into an argument. And remember to listen for cognitive dissonance. Is there any opening to reframe the topic, widen the perspective? If not, get back to your main topic and move to your last step. Yeah, well, you mentioned schools. It's the school that's making taxes go up. Why does it have to be so fancy? I know kids need to learn things, but it's so much money going into it. My kids went through, they did all right. Is it all those special needs kids? Do they have to go to our school? My own kids will never be able to come back here and afford a house. So you heard some conflicting ideas there. This is a point where you might offer some information to reframe the discussion and expand on your own views. I know the whole thing about school budgets is so confusing and frustrating. I'm upset about it too. But what makes me mad is that the state of New Hampshire doesn't help. Do you know New Hampshire pays the smallest share of local school costs in the whole country? Even the courts have ruled they're not providing enough funding. They're just pushing most of the cost down to us. And do you know about those education freedom accounts? Vouchers? They're sending our tax dollars to private schools, mostly for wealthy families. Now, you've offered some information and perspective, but if the conversation goes on from here, you're back to listening to help the voter hear their own conflicting ideas more clearly and sort them out. For the last step, you're bringing the focus back to your purpose and a call to action. So, this is why I'm out here today. Our elected representatives need to pay attention to us. They need to solve some of these problems, and we need to get other people speaking up. I know that Democrats in New Hampshire want to make things more affordable for people like you and me. For instance, Democrats fought hard to stop education freedom accounts. They don't believe that wealthy people should get state support to send their kids to private schools. They want to bring our tax dollars back to public schools. And the voter might say, well, I agree with that. I don't want to pay for private schools with my ridiculously high property taxes. It's got to stop. But what can I even do about my taxes? That's a signal to make your ask for action. This will be the target your group has decided on. It might be a menu of options, and these are listed in Minivan. Will you write to our representatives about this or call? Here's information on how to do that. Or will you come to the forum we're holding on school funding? Or we're going to Concord. Will you come? Even if someone just accepts your handout, they've taken a small action. Another ask that's very simple is this. Will you talk to one other person about this today? Is there somebody that you could have this conversation with? And simplest of all, could I come back and talk with you more? You sense this person is not ready for public commitment, but you've made a connection. Granting permission for a return visit is also a positive step from this voter. That brings us to the end. Thank you so much. Ending with thanks is appropriate no matter how the conversation went. And thanks to you for watching this bonus episode. The next one will introduce a different way to do step 5 at the end of the conversation, calling for accountability. I'll explain that in episode 12.
Well, I'm going to tell you, fascists, you may be surprised. People in this world are getting organized. You're bound to lose. You fascists bound to lose.